What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the Her Hoop Stats podcast, your daily podcast here every weekday from the Her Hoop Stats Network. It's Tyler, it's Brittany here talking some WNBA hoops. Look, we had no games yesterday, but we got a full pack slate today. Stop me if you've heard that before with the WNBA scheduling. You ready to talk some hoops?
Yeah, I am. It's always nice on a Tuesday morning.
Absolutely. I mean, look, it feels like they've been playing every night that we do have games. But the Lynx and Liberty are playing here again tonight, and we'll start off with that as we preview the key matchups of tonight. But I want to start off with this one because this has been such an exciting matchup, even with the injuries to both these teams having certainly changed the complexion of this matchup over the course of this kind of like mini in-season series that we've been seeing these two teams have. But I want to start off with this quote that I saw from Leonie Fibic because I think it's incredibly interesting to me, and I think it's more of a timing of it than anything. Obviously, New York has had their ups and downs and everything. They find themselves in the 3 seed right now. But the quote, and I'll read it into entirety, says, "As I said, physicality. We're gonna win that game like yes or yes. There's no other option. We're going to leave it all out on the floor, and I mean, we're going to give it all we have." I don't think that's a Lynx-specific quote, but the timing of it being able to say that quote and then go play the Lynx is incredibly exciting to me, honestly. Like, I love to hear that before going into this game. Just from a Liberty perspective, in terms of trying to get on the right track and to really kind of start building true momentum as you go deeper into this regular season towards the playoffs, what are you hoping to see from the Liberty tonight and against the Lynx team that they have not been able to beat so far this season?
Yeah, like you said, they've lost, the 3 prior matchups to them in coming off, obviously, a very contentious finals series last year where it's very clear, not that the teams don't like each other, but just the competitiveness
Mm-hmm.
that you see from both of them. And Liberty finding themselves in a spot, not only like, are you competing against the Lynx, but we're coming down where you're fighting for playoff position.
Right.
And so not only does this game mean a little bit more, obviously, because it's the Lynx, but you're looking at the playoff picture and you're trying to fight for the best seed possible. Now, Minnesota's put themselves in a spot where virtually impossible to catch them. I would say at this
Mm-hmm.
point, but the Liberty, like, they just need to find a consistency. Brianna Stewart's obviously ramping up. She was at practice yesterday, back in the mix there. So I just think for the Liberty, it's just a game, one, psychologically, because if you're seeing the Lynx in the playoffs, regardless if you had Brianna Stewart or not, and you haven't beat them, that is a little bit of a psychological barrier, I
Mm-hmm.
believe, as a athlete. So I just think this game at home being for the Liberty just extremely important from a lot of different perspectives.
Yeah, to me, it becomes a thing where it's like, and that quote is a positive sign for this to me. But it's if not now, so you've lost without Fee in the lineup now. Obviously, the Liberty have their own injuries, and like that certainly plays a part in this as well. But you've now lost several times, like without Fee. If you're at home now, you're on a 2-game losing streak, having lost to Vegas and then to Minnesota, and now you're at home. You have no Fee still. What are you prepared to do about it? It's kind of like where I'm getting to with the Liberty, especially as you see teams like Vegas, like Atlanta, that have just continued to ramp up their own success and in different ways. And to see New York on this kind of like downward kind of trajectory, this is the game to me where you can kind of, I don't want to say solve all your problems, but in the idea of, to your point, getting that win over Minnesota, which I think is genuinely very important because I absolutely believe in that psychological factor of like you haven't done it this year, and if you get to the playoffs and you have to go and do something you've never done over the course of this season, that's just an unnecessary challenge that you don't have
Mhm.
to have if you're able to go and win this game tonight. And then just the general momentum of New York right now is like it's non-existent, and to be able to go and use this game as the first win in a potential momentum boost, it's the perfect opponent to go and do that against if you're able to kind of go 2 birds 1 stone here with both Minnesota as a team and your own momentum individually. But goodness gracious, when you talk about momentum, I mean, Minnesota just keeps winning. And it certainly has been a topic of conversation with the MVP and everything and how that looks for free, excuse me. And to me, and we were kind of talking about this a little bit in pre-show. The difference between fee here and fee not here is not wins and losses inherently. It's fees here, and this team is generational. Fee not here, this team is still very, very good because one of the system of Cheryl Reeve and the coach that she is, but frankly, I think a lot of it has to do with the tone that Nafisa Collier has set for this team and the standard that she has, even when she's not on the floor. Well, just in general, and whether it be in these Liberty matchups or just talking about the Lynx, obviously they've had kind of a little bit of days off here and in between some of these games. But what has impressed you most about Minnesota with Nafisa Collier out of the lineup and the success that they've still been able to maintain without her there?
I think the most thing, obviously, the wins, but they just keep doing what they do, and
Mm,
that sounds so simple, but like you said, I mean, just the system Cheryl Reeve has in place, just an outstanding coach and their success. I mean, to only have 5 losses, and I said this last week on the pod with Jamie, in a league right now this year where it's extremely competitive,
mhm,
and that just to me is so impressive because they've shown up night in, night out, and it's not one person that's showing up every night. It's such a different collection. And that's what I think has been, so great for, as us to see. But I
right,
think obviously the addition of Dejanay Carrington has been huge for them too. Just such a versatile player, has really found a role in her system. And
mhm.
and that's again a credit to the front office and Cheryl Reeve identifying kind of that next piece that they needed, especially with Nafisa out of the lineup.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I still can't believe people were like, "I don't know if this is gonna work with Dejan." I was like, "This it adds up so easily to me, honestly." Like just
Hmm.
seeing it. But one thing I think for me is that like after or it was after the game, the last game, and Courtney Williams when she had a phenomenal game in that one. Who and she when she's on, goodness gracious,
Hmm.
she's on. And one thing she said was that none of us are going to replace Fee. Like that's not happening. But we can all do little things that add up to what kind of Fee kind of brings in this way. Whether it's a player like Courtney Williams going and scoring the way she did, or Elena Smith playing the defense that she already does, but in a more prominent role without Fee on the court there. Like it's those things that add up and this kind of culture, honestly, that has been able to be developed in Minnesota. Honestly, in a kind of interesting way, it kind of reminds me of Team USA, and like the not the almost the sacrifice, but also the ability to step up, and it's obviously very different just on the talent pool and everything, like when you think of that. But the dialogue that they have and the answers that they have to questions and press conferences and stuff like that very much kind of gives me that same energy. And obviously, Cheryl Reeve's involvement with Team USA is very storied
Hmm.
as well. And so like it mirrors it in some type of ways where just if nothing else, in the next person up mentality that they have, and it's served them incredibly well over the course of this season, especially with Fee out of the lineup. And this becomes a game again where I think for Minnesota, um, obviously the lead in the standings, like this is not some must win game by any means for them. But the idea of going and sweeping New York is something that is incredibly enticing. In for Minnesota, both to the point of the psychological aspect, as you mentioned, um, but also this is a very respectful rivalry that we have, and they want to win, especially on their home floor. They're gonna want to win, and I'm very excited to see what happens in this game. And for Liberty, again, it's we're kind of in this weird part of the season where it's like not everything is a quote unquote must win necessarily, but some games certainly feel more important than others, even during this tight race where every game is important. For this one for New York, it certainly feels like one of those that is more important than just that win loss record. So I'm very very excited for this one. But they're not the only team that are tight in that kind of playoff race that we're seeing tonight. Phoenix and Golden State is another one of those teams, and obviously Alyssa Thomas trying to make her case for MVP as well as and to me those standings are probably going to play a pretty decent role in where we end up here. But Golden State also just continues to be there, and it's miraculous to me honestly that we are still able to talk about Golden State in this way. They're setting all the records. I mean, goodness gracious, you want to talk about setting the standard for expansion franchises? Golden State has absolutely done that. I know we talked about it a little bit last time we were on here, but like Golden State just continues to impress by doing the little things to me, and here they are. What are your thoughts currently on where kind of the status of Golden State right now as they sit in that playoff position?
Yeah, I think they found themselves in this spot, and now they're in such a playoff race that I said this before, like, normally if you're an expansion franchise, you're hoping to compete, right? You're
Mhm.
not necessarily looking to be in the playoff hunt. And now that you're there, hey, they're professional basketball players that are
Yeah.
competitors. And so they are certainly going to play for that spot. And I think that has been, such a standard setter. I mean, if you're Portland, Toronto, Cleveland, I think you're looking and you might be a little nervous
Yeah.
coming into the league because the standard has been set so incredibly high with what they have done, not only in terms of the roster they've constructed, but really every piece of their franchise has
Mhm.
been so impressive. And on the floor, though, they're just the team that they don't go away. They make you play the way that they want to play. And
Mhm.
so it's never really, really pretty basketball, I would say,
Yeah.
but it plays to their strengths. And they find themselves in games more often than not because of the way they play. So, I think that just being at Valhalla will be a big test for the Mercury. But on the flip side of that, like, what are you seeing from the Mercury here coming down the stretch? I think they've had a little ups and downs. So,
Yeah.
what do you think about them?
That's my worry, honestly, is the ups and downs and trying to kind of find that consistency. To me, that's what's kind of setting them apart right now from the top 3 teams in the WNBA, Atlanta, New York, and Minnesota, is just finding that level of consistency. Because there's times where this big 3 is just absolutely humming, and you see the vision of what can be a potential contender for the WNBA championship. And then there's other times where, like, even if it's just they don't have a lot of wiggle room for a player to have an off night. And just obviously a lot of this team has overperformed from their name value when they were initially signed, and looking at this preseason roster, when you look at like the rookies on this team, like whether it's just their first year, whether they've been playing professional overseas for a long time, like whoever it might be, like the players surrounding that big 3, uh, there's not a ton of wiggle room in terms of like what you can expect from their production. They certainly have good games, like where they can
Hmm.
pop off, but you can't expect that. And so to me, I think Phoenix might arguably have like the biggest like floor to ceiling kind of difference here to me. In terms of like, especially like the top teams, the top 4 especially, and what they can bring. And so that's what I'm excited to see tonight, is like you get that win against Seattle. Before that, it was 2 losses, right? And then how do you try and just string together? That's just all I want to see, is just string together wins. As you kind of go down the stretch here. Yes, it's great for the playoff standings, but like I want to see consistency, and trying to find that. Like Satu has certainly been in all-star form at times this year. I mean, there's other times whether it be coming back from injury or whatever it might be, like where it's been that little bit of up and down. And so that's to me the biggest worry that I have, is finding out, like, especially with the usage of Satu Sabali, just from like a usage rate perspective, and even cost since she's come back. Like, you are putting so much responsibility on this big 3, and like rightfully so. Like, these, like, that's the caliber of players that they are, but there is just no room for error when it comes to what their performances can be in that Phoenix uniform, because that is the system that you have set up, and it's not necessarily right or wrong. It's just the reality of the situation. And to find them now, you go into a place where it's not an easy win by any
Hmm.
means, and um, to me, Phoenix is a team that can certainly kind of grind that out and go and get it. But I would like to see, in almost a weird way, I would like to see some like not great wins. I just want to see some good wins. Just in the sense of like, I don't want to see you going 50% from 3, and like just and it feels like, oh, it's one of those nights where Phoenix is hitting. How can
Yep.
you go and win whenever stuff is like mid level? And that's kind of
Hmm.
a weird thing to like go and be looking for, because obviously from their perspective, they just want to, every team wants to blow the other team out, but that'll be the thing that I think speaks most to me, is if they can go and get wins during this kind of this end of season time period, where they're kind of mid-level wins, and where it might not be the flashiest or the biggest score, differential or anything like that. Go and get some mid-level wins, and see how that looks. If they're able to do that and tough out some of those rough nights, I'll start to feel better about them. But I think you're absolutely right in the consistency aspect of it and kind of the up and downness of it. That is a worry to me, just in terms of like where I could put them in contender status. Where are you at with them? How are you feeling?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with in terms of grinding out a game,
Mm-hmm.
and you said it, like when they shoot really well, you're like, okay, this Mercury team, and that's the ceiling, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then they have those games where it's the floor, because when they aren't shooting well, those games become really hard for them, and they
Mhm.
haven't necessarily shown that they can win a lot of them. So coming down the stretch here, yeah, we need more consistency outside of really. Now the top 3 obviously are, the big 3 for them can be
Mhm.
a little inconsistent. I mean, AT pretty much gives you,
Yeah.
what she's gonna give you every night. Khan, Satu, you just never know. But I think it's kind of finding those, and I think Dewana Bonner off the bench has
Mhm.
provided a lot of consistency for them, but it's kind of that now fifth, sixth, a little
Yeah.
bit more from the rest of them. And that is hard because, like you said, there are a lot of rookies, but I mean, they have played professional basketball, but
Mhm.
it's a very different, type now. You're being a rookie in this league. And so I think that's just going to be the important thing over this, next couple of weeks is just finding a little bit more consistency. But like you said, the willingness to kind of grind out those mid-level games. And
Mhm.
certainly I think that is going to be tonight because that is how the Valkyries,
Yep.
are going to make you play. And I think down the stretch for them, that's going to be the key for the Valkyries as well, is just can they make teams play the way they want to every night and win consistently doing that?
Yeah, no, this might honestly be, like, the best place. If you wanna go grind out a win and learn how to do that, Valhalla might be the place to go and learn that,
Hmm.
with the atmosphere, with the play style, with the effort that Golden State puts on the floor every single time they touch it. This might be the place where you go and do that, and I think I don't know if there's been even a consistency in learning how to win like that. And again, it's kind of a weird ask because like you want you're telling a team, hey, don't shoot 50%. Like it's an odd ask. And it's
Hmm.
certainly not something that you directly strive for, but something I'll be interested in seeing if we can see kind of a trend of being able to overcome those nights where whether it's one of the big three not playing well or the role players aren't giving you much or whatever it might be, what are you overcoming? Because I feel like a lot of the wins is just like Phoenix dominated this game, and you feel
Hmm.
really good about that. But it's the other games. Those games are great. The ceiling is fantastic. It's
Yeah.
it's close to the floor that gets me worried. But one team that is certainly also starting to hit a ceiling that we weren't sure they would get to is Las Vegas, who play Atlanta tonight, which might end up being the game of the night, even with the Lynx and the Liberty. I'm ecstatic for this game. We've only seen these teams play once. Las Vegas came in with the win earlier in the season, and this becomes a game. I mean, I feel like you can say that just about any game at this point, but incredibly important to the standings. Obviously, right now, Atlanta in second seed, Las Vegas in that fifth seed, but it's a game and a half difference. Like this, it's in so incredibly tight. Like, and to say that Las Vegas is in the race for the two seed feels insane. So I want to start there before we dive in even more specific to the matchup. Like Las Vegas just kind of keeps growing and gelling and goodness since the decision for Jewel Lloyd to go to the bench and even bringing in Alyssa Smith for a trade piece, it has just started to gel in a way that I didn't think was frankly possible after seeing the early stretch of this season. But they've made the changes and here they are. What has impressed you the most about Las Vegas?
I think, like you said, just growing
Mhm.
as the season has evolved. I certainly was in the same boat as you, had kind of written the aces off.
Mhm.
Like, I didn't think they would make the playoffs. I mean, there were just some bad moments
Mhm.
early, but I think we also need to remind ourselves the roster makeup of this team, how good they are, how good Asia Wilson is,
Yeah.
the coach Becky Hammond is. And I think there was just a lot of adjustment period for them.
Mhm.
And it was figuring out, obviously, not only did they lose, Kelsey Plum most notably in the offseason, but assistant coaches too. And
Yeah.
so there's a big learning curve there just in terms of the expectations and the demands. And maybe they were bringing some new ideas to the table that were taking some time to integrate. And so I think that was a big thing, was just maybe we weren't patient enough because they have had all this success.
Mhm.
So they make the move for Melissa Smith, which I think was probably, I think you could argue the best, acquisition in terms of what that team needed at that
Mhm.
time, because it has just really freed Asia Wilson up,
Mhm.
because Melissa Smith is a viable offensive option. She rebounds the basketball incredibly well and just does a lot of little things that makes Asia Wilson's game, kind of take that next level, if that's even possible. And
Right.
then moving Jewel Lloyd, like I said, it's a psychological thing, but
Mhm.
man, it's done wonders for that team. And just, maybe she was at a point like, hey, I just want to see how the game's flowing, like how they're guarding, what they're doing, and being such a veteran player and taking the time to see that, and now coming into the game and taking advantage of maybe what the defense is giving that night to the Aces has just been really good. But I think just the involvement and, just the patience and the certainly from their standpoint, just the continued showing up every night and trusting that they are going to figure this out and right the ship. And then, we slept on them and here they are,
Right.
like you said, a game and a half out of the 2 seed. So kind of, what do you think has been the biggest thing outside of that for the Aces?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's become an aspect of a couple things. One, the Noah Smith trade, like just the activity, like next to Asia Wilson, like that's always kind of been like the glaring hole on this roster. Is just like who do you put next to Asia Wilson? And Kia Stokes has certainly like provided her service for Vegas over the years and has helped them win championships. It wasn't working earlier this
Mhm,
season. And Alyssa Smith, I thought like when that trade initially came through, my thoughts are well documented. Like that, I thought that was a very high price to pay with
yep,
that first round pick, especially with that draft class and everything. And but the trade has certainly become way more win win than I ever anticipated. Frankly, just because Las Vegas is turning around and Alyssa Smith has played a very genuine role in that, like the potential to get you a double double any night, and even just the activity alone. It to me, it's just made Asia's life easier, and to me, that was the biggest thing that was worrying me about early on in the season. Is last year we saw Asia Wilson by the time playoff time came was just burnt out. Like you were at
mhm,
like she was phenomenal, but you were asking so much of her. And this year you're seeing stats that are in that same realm of just like what feel like impossibility at times, but the burnout doesn't seem to be there. And I think a lot of that has to do with bringing in Alyssa Smith at this time period, like where it gets down the stretch and the grind is real. Like that to me has been such a major difference. And also I think the move to move Jewel Lloyd to the bench, you're now allowing her just to be a primary scorer at times. Like that was always the problem where it's like you bring in Jewel Lloyd to be a scorer, but you never like not that Asia was going to take every shot, but you're
mhm,
never going to have anyone else be that number one option.
right,
And I think allowing Jewel Lloyd to have those minutes where, yeah, Jewel go get us some buckets. Like that's what you bring in Jewel Lloyd to do is to go get buckets. And there wasn't really like that like seamless opportunity. I felt like for her just to go and do that with kind of like free thinking, if you will. And not that there's like a ton of minutes where Asia Wilson isn't on the court, but I think that those minutes, if nothing else, allows Jewel Lloyd to get into the feel of the game in her own way. So then when Asia
mhm,
Wilson does come on and she moves into that secondary role, it's become a lot more seamless. And I think the last part that's been maybe a little bit underrated is the fact that it was Kirsten Bell to move into the starting lineup, and KB has certainly gotten her slack when it comes to being a protected contract and all these different things. But one thing that I thought was missing this year with KP leaving was that floor of energy.
mhm,
And KP brought that every night to the starting lineup. In terms of just like she was never like the greatest defender or anything like that, but she was there constantly, just as if nothing else, you felt her presence on the court. And Kristen Bell, it's in a completely different way, but I feel like she raises the floor of energy on this team in a unique way. Where like it's not about filling up the box score or anything like that, but she's there. She's just like she's constantly around in different ways where Bell just again like just raising that aspect of energy on the floor where again to me those type of things make Asia Wilson's life easier. And that should be the goal of Las Vegas Aces. What can you do to make Asia Wilson's life easier? Because I promise you the returns are going to be there whenever that
mhm.
happens. And we've seen that. So that's another part that's been just more under the radar than anything. Like you can't it's kind of hard to like quantify that, but it's just a feeling that I've gotten when it comes to KB being on the floor. And along with Melissa Smith too, I think she's another one of those like energy raisers just on the floor at all times for Las Vegas.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. And I think, props to Becky Hammond and Jewel Lloyd being able to make that decision in the best interest of what the Aces needed at that time. I think that is probably a hard conversation, whether or a realization,
Mhm,
realization that, hey, like maybe I am better suited in this role, or we see you better fit there. So
mhm,
I think to do that, for someone who's been in the league 14 years, I think, or 13,
mhm.
that's a big thing. So I think, credit to Becky Hammond there too, making a decision that she thought was in the best interest of this team, and certainly it's helped them in the standings a ton.
Yeah, and now they find themselves in a fight with Atlanta. And Atlanta in their own right has been one of the hottest teams in the entire WNBA. Like you outside of like that storm loss, when you look at that recent schedule, it's a whole lot of green, it's a whole lot
Hmm.
of W's for Atlanta. I mean, again, this is a team that is also starting just to get healthier, just in general. Obviously, Ryan Howard's back in the lineup and is able to do. Jordan Canada goes down, but Tina Pow has shown like to be like a genuine WNBA caliber guard in this league as well. Um, look, I mean, you get Ryan Howard back, and that certainly changes the complexion of this team. And she's already kind of started to ramp up that scoring a little bit from those initial
Hmm.
games with like, the minutes restriction and everything. Um, I mean, goodness, where do you see Atlanta at right now? Because I mean, the possibilities here are looking more and more real by the day, honestly, of like where they stand in terms of like obviously the number 2 seed, but there's still like there was so much newness to this team that like it's still almost hard to comprehend them as like, oh, this team is like really
Yeah.
legit, like really, really real.
Yeah, I think they are right there. I
Mhm,
love the makeup of this team. They have size, their guard play is really good. They can beat you both ways, inside and out, which I think is a difficult, kind of thing to construct.
mhm,
And certainly they've, adapted well to Carl Semesco and his system. And I've said this before, I love that he has adapted to what
mhm,
the league is and what his team is made up of. But I mean, with Ryan Howard coming back, I certainly think that they have a great chance here to keep that 2
mhm,
seed and be a contender, just because they have the size, their guard play is really good, they can shoot the 3, they score around the rim. I don't know. I mean, for me, they're right there. I think they are certainly a team that needs to be talked about more.
mhm.
But like you said, you're kind of like, oh, the dreamer there.
Yeah,
So, what are your big takes on them this season?
yeah, I mean, very similar. Again, to me, it's I remember like you can go look back at the podcast from the preseason. I
Hmm.
questioned the whole everything,
Yep.
just in terms of the double bigs, like in the way that it was talked about initially. Like I was open to seeing, but like I was very hesitant about how this was going to work, and I think a lot of it has to do also with yes those double bigs work, but Alicia Gray is just playing like an MVP, and
Hmm.
like in that like I feel like it's been kind of a gradual rise for her, like, over just the course of her career, right? Obviously, like, coming from Dallas and growing into a larger role there in that way, but then the improvement in Atlanta as well, just over time, and that has been the most impressive thing to me, where it's like this none of this happens without Gray's play. And the like just but it be 3-point shooting, the defense, like whatever aspect you want to even point out with her, like you can pick it apart and you're gonna find genuine, very important pieces to why this whole thing works. And because to me, even down low, like the bigs down low, like it doesn't happen without the perimeter, and I think
Hmm.
vice versa in a lot of ways as well. But I've been so incredibly impressed with her, and then I think to me, Naz Hillman as well has just been such an important piece to this team. And being able to space the floor, being able to slot in, just really wherever you need her to go. Honestly, in a whole lot of ways, like you could play small with her, you could play her, at the 4 and space the floor with her. Now, like you've just seen improvement while also and it's kind of rare to see where you both see like individual player improvement to this level
Yep.
and a system that's completely new gelling in the way that it has simultaneously. I feel like that doesn't always happen in year one, especially. Like sometimes it could be like system gets gelled year one, player improvement happens year two. To see it all with a brand new roster as well, like it's just completely different. Like everything, if you compare these two teams, like from this year Atlanta to last year Atlanta, there's just so many differences. Where
Hmm.
like to me initially in the preseason, I would have expected maybe a 4 or 5 seed just based on that alone. Of just like there's going to be growing pains to this. Um, not that many. I mean,
Yeah.
here they are. Here they are on the 2 seed. So I think that's probably if I was like to pick one thing that's most impressive to me it's just how seamless this transition has been into this new era of Atlanta Dream basketball. And again, there's so many different reasons below that umbrella of why that has happened. But the overarching fact is that this has worked. And like, we'll see
Mhm.
how the playoffs go and everything. But this has been a success of a season that I don't know what the expectations were in house for Atlanta, but certainly from an outside looking in, this is way better than I ever anticipated them being in year one under Carlos Musco. So that is just incredibly impressive to me. Just the gelling that we've seen over the course of this year. So that's what stands out to me. But I'm stoked for this one. To me, this becomes a
Yeah.
game where it's like, again, neither game is like you don't want to throw the win now. I part out there a lot, but
Mhm.
to me, this is very much like a prove it game in terms of like where these teams stand and like where they feel that they can go. For Vegas, if you go and beat the 2 seed and you now have the season series over them because you'll have 2 out of the 3 games. This is massive for
Mhm.
both the immediate standings, both for a potential tiebreaker. Like every game just has so much weight to it right now. So I'm incredibly excited for this one. Really, all these games tonight. I mean, all these like this is one of the best like down the stretch times we've had in a WNBA season in a while, just in terms of like how tight everything is. So every game matters way more than it has any right to matter at this
Yeah.
point of the season. Like it's incredible. But I'm very excited for this one. So make sure you guys stay tapped in here at the Her Hoop Stats podcast. We're coming at you every weekday with a daily podcast. So make sure you're tapped in. Of course, we'll be back tomorrow. Hear about all of these games and how it all went down. There's so much to going down tonight. We have a full slate of games for the WNBA. So make sure you stay tapped in with us on social media. You're subscribed here, you're rating the podcast, all of those things, and we'll see you tomorrow.